Well, Tim, on these magnificent grounds of the Arboretum, Canberra's putting on its finest.
It is, yeah.
Just interested as an opening question, as somebody who has steeped their contribution to the world in climate science, can you recall when you first longed to follow that as a career or as an interest? Was there something that marks a time or maybe a period that you started to really yearn for and want to follow this passion?
Well, I've always loved the environment. The bush, the beach, the sea, it's always been my thing, so I've loved it. And I grew up on the outskirts of Melbourne at a time when environmental awareness wasn't quite where it should have been.
Yes.
There was a lot of inappropriate development. Looking back on it, I can see. And I suppose I became a bit of a activist in a way as quite an early age. But I didn't know much about climate change at all, and I was well into a scientific career where I was exploring the mammals of New Guinea. I was curator of mammals at the museum for many years, and climate change really impinged itself upon me. I kind of saw the evidence, and I realised that I really couldn't ignore it, and I had to do something about it. So that's how I ended up doing it.
And that sense of needing to do something about it, almost like you can't do anything other than what you've chosen to do. I'm fascinated about how you referenced in your speech Laudato Si. As faith-based school communities, we're founded upon this sense of being what we will call countercultural, so that we're inspired by the call of the gospel to do something that's radical, so that all life can flourish. What I was really fascinated about when you were speaking was, at what point is it appropriate to stand up? Not to protest to promote violence, but to actually declare that there becomes a time when you need to take some ownership and do something.
Well, I think that is the important question of the age. And to me, the most important thing any of us can do is be a leader in a way, in an area, in our area of influence. Now, the Holy Father, in producing Laudato Si, to me, it's a superb act of leadership. Really important. But that doesn't mean we can all relax and just be followers. We need to take the message to our families and our workplaces and our circles of influence. So that is the key thing. And to me, it is about that active leadership and just saying, I think this is important. I'm going to talk to people about it. I'm going to do in my life what's needed. All of that's acts of leadership. That's standing up and being counted. And that's what changes things at the end of the day.
Well, and it makes me think of Margaret Mead, and she said that never worry about the fact that anything more than a group of committed people can change the world, because indeed that's the only thing that ever has.
Absolutely, it is.
And so, with that message resonating, one of the things that I think would be very keen to hear your thoughts on would be, if we were to cast ahead from June 1, 2017, and like you did in your speech, we reflected back a century previous. But if we were to take the long view, and I know you did look at 2050 and say, look, our imagination and holding a space for imagination for us and for our young people, more importantly, is the greatest gift that we can offer in some sense. If we were to be bold, and we look ahead and it's 2050, what's a possible, plausible future that gives shape to us now taking action that can lead us to a future that is hopeful and life-giving? What does that 2050 look like, do you think?
Well, if I can just unpack a bit what we need to do to get there. So we need to cut the pollution stream hard and fast, and we need to start developing these new technologies. We need to be investing in research and development to give our kids the opportunity to engage with these industries and develop careers for themselves and a prosperous future. If we do all of that, I think that by 2050 we could be living on a planet with vibrant biodiversity, stable biodiversity, that's a great place to live, where there's space and food and clean air and clean water for everyone. We can have that. And what that will allow us to do is really for people to live to their full potential. There's nothing more disgraceful to me in the current world than seeing people whose potential is stunted by pollution or lack of opportunity or discrimination or whatever it is. That's unacceptable.
And within the encyclical, Pope Francis refers a lot to the wonder and beauty of our planet, and how in some ways we need to fall back in love with the beauty of that planet.
Yeah.
And that if we are to do that, then in some ways we will find ourselves into the solutions that we need to
Yeah.
find that fullness of life. What I'd be really interested to hear from you, Tim, is around what you pick up on in terms of the encyclical where the Pope talks about the need to change hearts and minds.
Yeah.
It's not just about necessarily practical responses, although they have their place, but there is something about, he talks about a conversion of heart and mind.
Yeah.
So how do we facilitate, as well as keeping a space for imagination, how do we keep a space for heart and mind conversion from your perspective?
Well, my great hero in that regard really is David Attenborough, who brings this beautiful world to us in an utterly unique way that we can then value the, we understand, we learn, we value, we realise we're part of this greater whole. And that's I suppose an aspiration of mine to try to do something in that way. Nothing like as great as David does, but do something. But for me, there's another message. There's another layer of message in that Laudato Si and what the Holy Father says, and that is really around this idea that in my own words I put as maturing into the world. We can't any longer act as children in this world. We have to actually take responsibility, and I suppose you have to learn to love something before you take responsibility for it.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah.
It is absolutely true. But we need to understand that we are immensely powerful, privileged beings on this fragile planet, and it depends so much upon us.
Yes.
And it is extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, look at it.
And it's gorgeous.
It's
today.
amazing.
Yeah.
Every day it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be this way. It could be an inhospitable, uninhabitable rock in space, but it's not. It's this incredible thing,
Yes. Yes.
And so that's what we've got to keep.
Yeah. And just finally, Tim, we're gathering here in Canberra, the nation's capital. Our principals from across the EREA have declared, look, we need to make a statement. We need to gather. We need to come together. Would there be something that, from your perspective, that you would offer us as a key message that would stimulate our movement towards this 2050 vision? So we are people, we are educating the young people of the future. You've talked about the idea of creating space for imagination so that they can be stimulated towards responding and following careers that are going to allow us to move into a greater future. What would be for you a key message that could leverage possibility of this future that we can take away?
Well, I think if the principals in that room take Laudato Si to their heart and live the change, and let their schools live the change, and let their students be part of that, that's what we need.
Thank you.
And maybe I can help just put that in scientific framework a little bit to give some tools, but really that's the change. That's what we need.
Thank you. Well, Tim, you've been very generous with your time to be with us today, and we've been heartened by your passion, and I know we also want to acknowledge the work that you've done in leading our country and the world in responding to the issue of our times. And from us, we want to pass on our great thanks and heart for you to continue in the work that you're doing to advocate for the world and the change that's needed. So from us to you, please take that with you and know that we're with you, and we will carry on the work on your behalf as well, back to our school community. So many thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Good on you. Take care.
Good, mate.
Thank you.
Too.